Drink Pepsi Black for max taste, no sugar. Pepsi Black time, 18 hours.
The news from Guyana, the region and the world. Compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom and powered by DemeraraWaves.com.
The news comes to you compliments of KFC. It's finger-licking good. With the news, I am Ruth Wilson. Good evening. First, the highlights. The Alliance for Change is accusing the governing People's Progressive Party administration of stalling the Public Accounts Committee process of shortlisting names for the Public Procurement Commission. One parliamentary political party is calling for the restart of amending election laws and to include the Law Reform Commission and other experts. Trinidad and Tobago's Energy Minister Stuart Young is warning Guyana and Suriname about opportunists who would like to take advantage of the oil sector in the two countries. The Caribbean Examinations Council, CXC, today announced that preparations have started to put a new examination in place for school. And the health minister says to expect more cases and possible COVID deaths from low vaccinated regions despite a decline in cases overall. In the region, faith-based groups are challenging the government of Barbados over attempts to tamper with references to God in the coming Charter of Barbados. And internationally, the U.S. says it is releasing 50 million barrels of oil from its reserves in an attempt to bring down soaring energy and petrol prices. Details of these and other stories in a moment.
After a hard day's work, a lime at the workplace would be great, and even greater and better with KFC, with a wide choice of finger-licking meals in a wide range of sizes. Could be a birthday celebration or promotion, or a lime for no reason at all. Any lime, anytime, anywhere is better and tastier with a delicious meal from any of KFC's 9 locations, including the Amazonia Mall at Providence, open now from 9 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. KFC.
It's finger-licking good.
And now for the news in detail. The Alliance for Change says that the governing People's Progressive Party, PPP, is dragging its feet on the process for the appointment of members of the Public Procurement Commission, PCC. Opposition member of the Public Accounts Committee, PAC, and former chairman of the PAC, David Patterson, says the PAC has begun the process to have the members approved first by the PAC, but is suffering setback by the government. The PAC is now to shortlist 5 names from a list of 30 applicants for whom background checks were completed.
Names came back, and since the recess, the opposition has been trying to meet with the lead person, which is Madam Gail Teixeira, up for the subcommittee to further discuss this program, this matter. Unfortunately, to date, we were unable to. She is unable to facilitate the meeting.
During a PAC meeting on Monday, November 22, Governance Minister Gail Teixeira committed to seeing the process moving forward. Mr. Patterson says he is unimpressed and not hopeful.
Yesterday, it came up again in PAC, and we were promised that sometime this week we can restart the process of examining the names so that we could further shortlist them. I am not hopeful because the PPP doesn't. As you can see, based on what's going on now, they don't see this as a priority. They actually returning to the pre-2015 position, which they claim that the Public Procurement Commission was unconstitutional and it takes away the power from cabinet to make decisions. That's their exact words, and the former President Ramachar's exact words to the Alliance for Change. So we will keep pressing, but that is the current status, Wendell.
A civil society group has threatened to take legal action for the president's breach of constitutional provisions that provides for the appointment of several commissions and bodies. President Ali, since taking office more than a year ago, has not appointed any except the Local Government Commission. The Alliance for Change, AFC, calls on the government to begin a fresh process to amend elections laws and involve the Constitutional Law Reform Commission and other competent bodies.
The AFC does not see these amendments as a genuine, honest response to the problems which exist and which ought to be cured. It sees these amendments as a platform for PPP to take off in a full course of gerrymandering of District 4 to its advantage. It urges the restart of the process with all participants and stakeholders playing their roles and having their say from a drafting stage to completion stage with the help of experts who should be hired by the Law Reform Commission or can be from international and regional centers.
Leader of the AFC, Kemraj Ramjatan, in a media conference on Tuesday said the Law Reform Commission is the commission to supervise and advise on law changes. Mr. Ramjatan says the government is making the LRC a toothless poodle.
The Attorney General and the government of Guyana, they formed what is called a Law Reform Commission. And they were very adamant that the Law Reform Commission must have a say as to every major piece of legislation to be amended or to be brought in the parliament. Now, it is a very useful piece of scrutiny coming from that kind of commission, because they are going to ensure that they know the purpose of the existing law, the weaknesses and defects of it, and what can be the best proposals for strengthening it or to cover the lacuna in the law.
The AFC leader says the party studied the amendments and found them to be unacceptable and biasly recommended.
The AFC, having deliberated on the PPP's recommended changes to the Representation of the People Act, has become even more non-supportive and suspicious of the purport and content of the amendments. The party maintains that the unilateral and stealthy nature of these amendments reveal, like other developments since its installation into office, a further removal by the PPP government from meaningful consultation and participation on serious matters such as electoral reform. This biased, subjectivist process has poisoned these amendments beyond acceptance.
The AFC leader says the draft amendments are not geared to cure, but to drive fear and reluctance of persons to seek those offices, which opens the door for party loyalists to be employed. Mr. Kemraj Ramjatan believes that the draconian penalties are there to be applied in a biased manner to whom the government targets. Former director of the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, Dr. Vincent Adams, and member of the Alliance for Change, calls on the government to not approve the Yellowtail project until ExxonMobil agrees to audit its $9.5 billion bill submitted to Guyana. Dr. Vincent Adams, who was fired by the present administration as director of the EPA, wants the government to ensure that ExxonMobil expenses submitted to Guyana for reimbursement be audited. Dr. Adams calls for the withholding of approval of one project Exxon is seeking to develop to get the audit.
The AFC is calling upon the government to not approve the Yellowtail project until Exxon agrees to this audit. A similar demand of the EPA under the coalition proved to be successful in obtaining unlimited liability assurance coverage from the parent companies of EPGL as a condition for approving the Liza 2 project. But unfortunately, true to form, the PPP civic government promptly reversed that decision.
Former Public Infrastructure Minister under the APNU-AFC coalition, David Patterson, says it's important for Guyana to know what is included in Exxon's $9.5 billion bill to Guyana.
Included in this $9 billion are other such causes as the cost of Exxon's new headquarters being constructed in Ogle. Every time Exxon charters a private plane to travel from the USA to Guyana, this cost is cost reimbursable. Every function that Exxon hosts, every bottle of wild wine drank by the invitees at these functions can be listed as cost recoverable. Every social media ad claiming that the company is a good corporate citizen is cost recoverable. Included in this $9 billion will be the salaries for persons in Houston and other parts of the world who the company may claim are working on Guyana's projects. In fact, every single item, despite how remote, with even the merest or no connection to Guyana, can be included in these costs.
Mr. David Patterson reminded that while in opposition, the PPP called for an audit of Exxon pre-contract cost of $460 million. He says that audit was completed more than a year ago and questioned why the result of that audit is not released to the public. Trinidad and Tobago's Energy Minister Stuart Young is warning Guyana and Suriname about opportunists who would like to take advantage of the oil sector. He was this morning addressing the first policy forum organized by the Energy Chamber of Trinidad and Tobago.
The same Surinamese delegation that you met with last week, we also met with, and I gave them a commitment that there is a complete open door policy. In fact, I told them it would be to their benefit. There would be a lot of carpetbaggers, as I call them, rushing to Suriname and to Guyana, selling them what they consider the best advice in the world and trying to lead them down garden paths. They can learn from Trinidad and Tobago, and we are willing at the government level to facilitate that, to share our experiences, to share our ideas.
At the same time, the Trinidad and Tobago Energy Minister is urging the Energy Chamber in his country, which is well positioned, to take advantage of opportunities in sister Caribbean community CARICOM member states.
Regional integration is something some of us strive for and hope for, but we must be realistic as well of the difficulties that we, Trinidad and Tobago, may have in entering other regional jurisdictions. Again, I give the commitment that the government is willing to work with the membership of the Energy Chamber to listen and for us to formulate a strategy to ensure that our personnel, our services, and our assets and what it is we can offer as Trinidad and Tobago to our regional brothers and sisters can be made available.
Prior to returning to office last August, the People's Progressive Party had been very critical about the numerous Trinidad and Tobago companies that had been coming to work in Guyana's oil sector. The Irfan Ali-led administration has since said that certain areas, such as catering, lawn mowing, laundry and trucking, are services that are reserved for Guyanese. The Caribbean Examinations Council, CXC, today announced that preparations have started to put a new examination in place. Addressing the opening of a CXC ministerial summit, the registrar and chief executive officer of that regional examining body, Dr. Wayne Wesley, says the aim is to reduce the number of secondary school students leaving without certification. Dr. Wesley says its Research, Insights and Production Innovation Department has started discussing a new design of the framework for the award of certification. Among the plans, he says, is the introduction of a new certificate named the Caribbean Technical Education Certificate, CTEC.
CTEC will be a broad-based qualification geared towards character development, technical and applied competencies for employment, entrepreneurship, and good citizenry. In other words, a sense of regional pride. The CTEC would represent the minimum competencies for an individual to perform in society while providing opportunities for students to continue to pursue the CSEC and CAPE at an appropriate time of readiness.
The CXC registrar says CTEC's aim is to give opportunities to as many secondary school leavers as possible through regional certification.
This, we believe, will create alternative pathways for all candidates as we seek to promote equity with all qualifications issued by CXC, ensuring that value and parity of esteem are placed on all qualifications.
CXC Registrar and Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Wayne Wesley. Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, has called on the Caribbean Examination Council, CXC, to make history a compulsory subject in schools in CARICOM. Dr. Ralph Gonsalves was at the time delivering keynote remarks at the Regional Examination Body inaugural Education Ministerial Summit under the theme Facilitating Transformation Through Assessment. Dr. Gonsalves says understanding and appreciating the birth of regional institutions will come through knowing how the key institutions were formed.
Before 1972, this CXC didn't exist. We need to understand how it came about and its journey to where we are today is to understand our history. I want to begin by making the point very strongly that I've been on record of supporting the making of history to be compulsory in secondary schools.
The St. Vincent Prime Minister says history seems to belong to lesser mortals since most feel that science subjects are more for the brilliant students. PM Gonsalves told the summit that history is key for CARICOM.
When I speak to the question of history and look at the way it connects with our regional integration movement and development, sustainable development, we would see the necessity and desirability for having the subject compulsory on our syllabus for the secondary schools. I wouldn't be surprised if you take a poll across the Caribbean among teachers and students, and you were to pose the question as to name recognition and importance to our region, and you ask them who it is, whether it's Walter Rodney or Walter Raleigh, more than likely Walter Raleigh is going to win out. It is an indictment of our own education system and perhaps of CXC itself. And that is why this is so critical that this discussion has arisen.
Dr. Gonsalves urged that teaching contemporary history in schools addresses areas of the molding of the Caribbean and its international relations with global groups. He says our understanding of ourselves as a region will come from learning that history.
To understand all of these things and the role they have played in our Caribbean civilization and in our development and certainly in our integration movement, we can't grasp them unless we have a study of our history, of the social movements, of the economic structures, of the institutions, of the links between the metropole and the hinterland, between modern capitalism and the globalized world, and the nexus between those things and the external trade arrangements between ourselves and Europe and North America.
The summit, which was held today, saw presentations from 12 speakers to address various aspects of transforming the regional education body to deliver education to enhance the educational capacity and needs of the region. The health minister says to expect more cases and possible COVID deaths from low vaccinated regions despite a decline in cases overall. Dr. Frank Anthony says there are hotspots in Region 4, East Coast, East Bank and Georgetown, Region 3 and Region 6. He, however, pointed to regions with a low vaccination rate that could possibly pose a challenge.
In the areas where we have a lot of people still remain unvaccinated, unfortunately, we are going to have more cases. And some of those cases are going to be severe and would require hospitalization. So the regions right now with the lowest vaccination rates would be Region 10, Region 8, and Region 2. And we would therefore expect that at some point, when we get cases from these regions, and we will probably see some of the more severe cases coming out that require hospitalization. And if people remain unvaccinated, some of them will die.
Dr. Anthony has reported lower active cases and hospitalization.
We have 1,836 active cases, and over the last 24 hours, we got about 95 new cases. Of the 1,836 cases. We now have 58 persons in hospital, with 33 of those persons at the Ocean View Hospital. And 9 of them is in the ICU.
2 deaths were recorded in the last 24 hours, taking the death toll to 979. The ministry says 396,840 adults and 28,769 children are partially vaccinated, while 271,206 adults and 19,946 children are fully vaccinated against COVID-19. You're still with us on News Talk Radio Guyana 103.1 FM. It's 18 hours 21. We turn to news in the region. The government of Antigua is undecided as to what will happen to some 100 substitute teachers employed to support education delivery during the COVID surge. The Antigua Observer reports that unvaccinated teachers will return to work December 1. During last week's post-cabinet press briefing, Information Minister Melford Nicholas said it would be up to the Ministry of Education to determine whether the substitute teachers will permanently fill positions that were vacant before the mandate or to keep them for just their intended 3-month stint. The Director of Education, Claire Brown, says although it is premature to say, an assessment will be made to determine how many of the substitutes could be made permanent. Although Brown could not give definitive answers, he says that plans are in the pipeline for the ministry to implement a proper substitute teachers program. The government is requiring unvaccinated teachers returning to work next week to provide a negative antigen test and then submit to COVID-19 testing every 2 weeks. Tests will be provided to public sector workers free of charge. United National Congress opposition leader Kamla Prasad-Bissessar has again questioned how Principal Medical Officer of Health Dr. Miriam Abdul-Richards can be politically independent in handling health care when she's earning taxpayers' dollars while serving on 3 other state boards. According to the TNT Guardian News, opposition leader Kamla Prasad-Bissessar insists that according to public service rules, Dr. Miriam Abdul-Richards is bound to be non-political, which is impossible with her serving on 3 other state boards. The opposition leader told a UNC meeting that Dr. Miriam Abdul-Richards is a tool of the government and a favored one. Prasad-Bissessar queried the continuing rise COVID cases, saying the situation is worsening and there is need to know why so many deaths are recorded. UNC's Rudy Indar Singh called on Abdul-Richards to say if her positions on several boards, including one concerning production and sale of alcohol, and Agosturia Holdings Limited, put her in conflict with her health role in violation of Civil Service Regulation 137. During yesterday's Ministry of Health media briefing, however, Health Minister Terence Dale Singh said he had consulted with the Permanent Secretary after the matter was raised over the weekend and was advised that Abdul-Richards was not in breach of the Public Service Regulations, which do not debar a public servant from having such positions on a private company board. Faith-based groups are challenging the government over attempts to tamper with references to God in the coming Charter of Barbados. Nation News Barbados has reported that as an umbrella body of Family Faith Freedom Barbados, the group issued a full-page statement in the Daily Nation on page 14. This is in addition to a number of prominent individuals who spoke at a press conference entitled "Why We Need God Under a Barbados Republic." Chairman of the group, Pastor Paul Leacock, questioned the government's rush to a republic and the tinkering with God as the supreme being. Pastor Leacock says the government introduced a whole berriffle of things which they had to walk back on constantly, the latest being safe zones. He added that over and over in the Mia Mottley administration, there's the constant walking back of legislation, policies, and directives. At 18 hours and 25, we now turn to BBC World Service for the international news.
Hello, this is Danielle Yawowiecka with the BBC News. The United States is to release 50 million barrels of oil from its strategic reserves to try to bring down energy prices. The move was coordinated with the governments of China, Japan, South Korea, Britain and India. President Biden said the US couldn't afford to wait for oil prices to drop.
We're taking action. The big part of the reason Americans are facing high gas prices is because oil-producing countries and large companies have not ramped up the supply of oil quickly enough to meet the demand. And the smaller supply means higher prices globally.
The announcement has been criticised by Republicans. Their leader in the House, Kevin McCarthy, said it was a crass political ploy. Analysts say the move's effect on prices is likely to be short-lived because of the strong global recovery from the pandemic. A federal jury in the United States has found that 3 retail pharmacy chains helped fuel an opioid epidemic in 2 districts in the state of Ohio. The court in Cleveland concluded that CVS, Walgreens and Walmart had behaved recklessly by oversupplying addictive painkillers. It's up to a federal judge to decide how much compensation the firms owe. Lawyers representing Lake and Trumbull counties have said the costs are potentially $1 billion for each area. The US Africa envoy has warned escalating fighting in Ethiopia threatens diplomatic progress towards a ceasefire. Jeffrey Feltman said the government and rebels thought they were on the cusp of victory. He said a rebel attack on the capital, Addis Ababa, would be catastrophic. As fighters from the Tigray People's Liberation Front advance on the city, the United Nations is evacuating the families of its international staff from Ethiopia. The South African President Cyril Ramaphosa called for an end to the year-long war.
There is an urgent need for all parties to the conflict to commit to an immediate, indefinite, and negotiated ceasefire and an all-inclusive political dialogue.
After a day of talks in Tehran aimed at salvaging the 2015 nuclear deal with Iran, the head of the UN nuclear watchdog has said he's seeking common ground. The IAEA's chief, Rafael Grossi, made the remarks following his first face-to-face meeting with new Iranian government officials. Mike Thompson reports.
Mr Grossi met the country's new foreign minister, Hussein Emir Abdullahian, who urged the IAEA to avoid taking political positions. The US abandoned the 2015 deal, which gave Iran sanctions relief in return for curbs on its nuclear program 3 years ago. Washington warned recently that Iran was reaching the point of no return for reviving the deal, while Tehran has insisted that all US sanctions must first be lifted.
BBC News. Apple says it's suing the Israeli cyber firm NSO Group and its parent company for allegedly targeting users with spyware. The tech giant said it was taking action to ban NSO from using Apple services or devices. The Israeli company is facing international criticism after reporters obtained a list of alleged potential targets for its Pegasus spyware, including activists, politicians and journalists. The European Commission says it'll impose sanctions on the Belarusian airline Belavia and other companies it accuses of helping to traffic migrants to the EU via Belarus. The proposal is expected to be approved in the coming days. Here's Jessica Parker.
The Commission says that there are transport operators who, knowingly or unknowingly, have helped traffic people to Belarus, migrants who then made their way to the EU's border and were left to camp out in cold and squalid conditions. The Commission is proposing countermeasures that could see firms linked to such activities banned from expanding or even operating in EU territory. The Belarusian leader, Alexander Lukashenko, has been accused of orchestrating the recent crisis in retaliation for sanctions. Mr. Lukashenko has denied inviting migrants into Belarus, but says his forces may have helped people cross into Poland.
One of China's best-known fashion photographers has apologised following a row about how she depicted a Chinese model. Chun Man was accused of pandering to Western stereotypes in a photograph of the French fashion firm Dior. In a social media post, she said in future she'd tell China's story better. Beijing routinely pressures artists into conforming to the authorities' worldview. A rare manuscript showing calculations made by Albert Einstein as he tried to formulate his general theory of relativity has sold at auction in Paris for more than $13 million. It's one of only 2 documents showing his workings on one of the seminal breakthroughs in modern physics. That's the latest BBC News.
And that's the news to the moment.
After a hard day's work, delicious comfort food is all we crave for. There at KFC, they've got you covered with a wide choice of delicious, finger-licking good meals from any of their 9 locations, including the Amazonia Mall at Providence. And there are 6 drive-through locations for your convenience. Their 11 herbs and spices are sure to blow those post-work vibes away every time. It's the perfect way to end a hard day. KFC.
It's finger licking good.
To end the news, here's a recap of the highlights. The Alliance for Change is accusing the governing People's Progressive Party administration of stalling the Public Accounts Committee process of shortlisting names for the Public Procurement Commission. One parliamentary political party is calling for the restart of amending election laws and to include the Law Reform Commission and other experts. Trinidad and Tobago's Energy Minister Stuart Young is warning Guyana and Suriname about opportunists who would like to take advantage of the oil sector in the 2 countries. The Caribbean Examinations Council, CXC, today announced that preparations have started to put a new examination in place for school. And the health minister says to expect more cases and possible COVID deaths from low vaccinated regions despite a decline in cases overall. In the region, faith-based groups are challenging the government of Barbados over attempts to tamper with the references to God in the coming Charter of Barbados. And internationally, the U.S. says it is releasing 50 million barrels of oil from its reserves in an attempt to bring down soaring energy and petrol prices. The news came to you compliments of KFC. It's finger-licking good.
This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com, and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com/demwaves.
Want to enjoy a variety of classical music and information? Join us every Sunday at 6:30 p.m. for Classics with Rosemary, right here on News Talk Radio Guyana, 103.1 FM.
Here is an unbelievable offer from News Talk Radio Guyana, 103.1 FM. You can send season's greetings December 24, 25, 26, and 27, and Happy New Year's greetings December 31 and January 1, 6 times each day, plus streaming of your image on Facebook on Christmas Day and New Year's Day, plus a 5-minute live broadcast from your firm. All this for just $20,000, or 4 times each day for $15,000. Call 614-8205 or 692-9400 for details and say season's greetings through 103.1 FM.
The Guyana Elections Commission is inviting applications from suitably qualified persons to fill the following positions: voter registration manager and a research officer. Applications must be signed by the applicant and include a detailed curriculum vitae along with 2 recent letters of recommendation. Envelopes should be clearly marked vacancy for and addressed to the chairman of the Guyana Elections Commission, Lot 41 High Street, Kingston, Georgetown. Electronic applications must be signed by the applicant and should be sent via email to applications@gcom.org.gy. Interested applicants can visit GCOM's website at www.gcom.org.gy/home/vacancies to access the detailed job description. Closing date for submission of applications is Thursday, November 25, 2021. You are with us on News Talk Radio Guyana 103.1 FM. Accurate information blended with great music. News Talk Radio Guyana time, 18 hours 35. We now join with the BBC.
Making a lot more. They do not seem to be passing that on to the consumers at the pump. In fact, if the gap between wholesale and retail gas prices was in line with past averages,